It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. I bet you didn't know that inventing activity by Black inventors peaked in 1899, and it has never recovered. Black and Hispanic college graduates patented half the rate of white college graduates. That's just one of the reasons why you need to know about Invent Together. When our patent system gets more diverse, our nation will get stronger and more successful. Find out how you can help diverse inventors and unleash economic opportunity at inventtogether.org.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Friday, July 16th, 2021, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to continue taking a look, a much deeper look at each of the Orioles draft picks that they selected earlier this week in the 2021 MLB Draft. On yesterday's episode, if you haven't listened to it, go back and check that one out. We talked about Colton Cowser, the Orioles' first-round pick, who they took with the 5th overall selection. Jason Barfield, the play-by-play voice of Sam Houston State Baseball, joined us to talk about Cowser's college career, how he grew as a hitter, and how he really got to the point where he was going to be a top 10 pick. Well, today we're just moving right along in chronological order in the draft. We head to the Orioles' second round pick, the 41st overall selection. The second baseman at ECU, Connor Norby, who led all of Division I baseball with 102 hits in the 2021 season, and who hit 2 homers combined in his first 2 college seasons, then hit 15 of them this year while hitting over 400 basically all season. So we are going to chat about that selection by the Orioles, and we're going to be joined by Stephen Igo, who covers the ECU Pirates, the baseball team included, over at 24/7 Sports, and he is going to join us to talk about Norby. And then at the end of the pod, we will preview Orioles baseball, because the O's are back in Major League action for the first time since Sunday, as they will kick off the second half of the 2021 season in Kansas City against the Royals for a 3-game series that starts tonight, and we will preview that series against KC. But that is all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the app and join me every week to talk Orioles and get in on the action over at Spotify Green Room, changing the way we talk sports. So today we continue our 2021 Orioles MLB Draft breakdowns with the O's second round pick, and that is Connor Norby, 5'10" and 180-pound infielder. Now, he's been a middle infielder. He's played a little shortstop, mostly second base at East Carolina University, a native of Kernersville, North Carolina, and East Forsyth High School, where he played his high school ball there in NC. And Norby, who is a 21-year-old second baseman who had an incredible 2021 season. Right-handed batter who in 61 games in 2021 hit .415 with a .486 on base and a .659 slugging percentage. He had 15 doubles, 15 home runs, 51 RBIs, 33 walks to 34 strikeouts, and he was 18 for 22 stealing bases, as well as playing a pretty solid second base for ECU defensively. And this was a very good ECU team that hosted a regional and was in the top 10 for a lot of the year in college baseball and made it to the super regionals before running into the buzzsaw that was Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, and Vanderbilt. But one thing to know about Connor Norby, ECU lost that super regional to Vandy and got, pretty much shut down by Leiter and Rocker. But Norby had a hit in each of those games. He had a late single against Kumar Rocker in game 1, and then he led off the game with a single on the second pitch against Jack Leiter in game 2. So he's been able to get some hits off of obviously some of the best competition. Those two guys, top 10 picks in this year's draft. But for Connor Norby, it was interesting. He was great in 2020 in the 17 games that he played before the shutdown, hit .403 with a .439 on base, had a double, a triple, and a homer, 10 RBIs. But he still wasn't much of a power hitter. And really, as a true freshman in 2019, he played sparingly. He appeared in 26 games, but he only had 35 plate appearances. He, was 6 for 31 at the dish, had 1 home run. He struck out 9 times. Just wasn't there for Connor Norby as a freshman, and he was not a starter. Then it got to 2020. He was dominating, season cut short, didn't know what would come of it. Well, all of a sudden, he continued to dominate in 2021, plus the power came. 15 home runs this season in 284 plate appearances after having 2 home runs in 105 plate appearances over his first 2 years. And, he does play in a pretty small ballpark. It's very hitter-friendly at ECU, but still, that is a pretty good number for Connor Norby. But, we wanted to get the lowdown on, not just his incredible 2021 season, but his entire career, really, with ECU and, what allowed him to shoot up draft boards this year. I mean, there were a good amount of people talking before the draft that Norby, as he continued to rise, could have potentially slipped into the bottom of the first round. I think the Orioles were lucky to be able to snatch him up in the early second round with the 41st overall pick. So to tell us more about Connor Norby and his ECU career, Stephen Igo is joining the podcast. He covers East Carolina sports and recruiting over at the Hoist the Colors blog, which is the site that covers ECU sports over at the 24/7 Sports Network. And Stephen, very knowledgeable, has watched Connor Norby play a lot in his 3 years at ECU. And coming up after the break, he's going to join us to talk about the Orioles' second-round pick, Connor Norby. So we'll get to our chat about Orioles' second-round pick, Connor Norby, in just a second. But first, got to tell you about Built Bar. And did you know that Built Bar has just so many delicious flavors that there's something for everyone? They've got flavors like coconut, cherry barcia, mint brownie, strawberry, cookies and cream, just everything you can imagine across the board. My favorite flavor, well, I got to go with the peanut butter chocolate. But for you, if you haven't picked that favorite flavor yet, you can change that right now. You can go to BuiltBar.com and order a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. You can try them all and then pick your favorite. But the Built Bars, they're delicious, but they're also healthy too. That's the best part. These bars have 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, and only 4 or 5 grams of net carbs. So order today. Get the raspberry or maybe the salted caramel or whatever you might like. And Built Bar is the official protein bar of the U.S. track and field team. Pretty cool as well. So go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON for 15% off at BuiltBar.com.
It's time to become a better. BetQL rates every potential bet on a scale of 1 to 5 stars based on real, proven analytics.
Who am I going to trust? I'm going to trust the randos on Twitter versus the app that's telling me, hey, listen, we've run this simulation 9 gazillion times, and it's coming up as 5 stars. You're really going to have a better opportunity to win if you put your money here.
Bet smarter and beat the books with BetQL. Save 20% with promo code PODCAST. That's 20% off with promo code PODCAST at BetQL.com.
All right, so we welcome Stephen Igo into the podcast. He covers all things East Carolina sports, including the baseball team over at Hoist the Colors, the 24/7 sports site covering ECU. And Stephen, first of all, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Absolutely. Always good to talk Major League Baseball and future Pirates. I love baseball, so enjoy doing it.
Yeah, and we have you on to talk Connor Norby, who was the Orioles' second-round pick in the draft this week, and a guy that obviously they're putting a lot of stock into in a rebuilding team right now and taking him with their second selection. So I wanted to start really with Norby's 2021 season because he was just ridiculous this year, and one of the reasons why he shot all the way up to what many people thought could have been a late first-round pick and ends up being an early second-round pick. But I mean, he leads the nation in hits with 102. He ends up hitting 415, in 61 games. Was there? I got to ask first, was there ever a time where he went into a slump this year? It just feels like with those numbers, he was just always hitting all year. Yeah, that's the thing is the games that he would go 0 for 4, or even really 1 for 4, 1 for 5. It was like, man, what's going on with Norby?
he consistently put the bat on the ball. He doesn't strike out often. He does like to attack early in counts. Really disciplined approach, though, doesn't chase outside the zone much. So he always gave himself a chance. He put the ball in play a lot. There were very few games where he struck out multiple times, maybe one or two that I can think of offhand. So he never really hit a prolonged slump. I mean, there were times that he, I guess, win a game, maybe a 2 or 3 game stretch with only a couple of hits, more so than going 3 for 4 or 2 for 5, that sort of deal. But I mean, he was always checking in with a hit a night, it seemed like, even when he was not at his best. So, I mean, there were different spells where he was hitting for more power at times than just singles, but I mean, he really never had a prolonged slump throughout the whole season. That's what was most remarkable about his 2021 campaign.
Yeah, you mentioned the power. That's what I wanted to get to next. Now, I know, they play in a pretty small, pretty hitter-friendly ballpark at ECU, but I mean, for a guy who had, 2 home runs and 1 double through his first 44 games of his career in his first 2 years, then he hits 15 homers and 15 doubles in the 61 games in 2021. I mean, was it approach change? Did he get stronger? I mean, what happens there to just have that power outburst this year?
I think a lot of it was he did develop strength. He came in with a pretty compact, good frame for that. He's got that classic middle infielder, second baseman frame, not overly tall, but, pretty broad shoulders for his size. You can tell he's got some muscle to him. And the most impressive thing for me was, a lot of people just see him as, maybe because of his size, only a guy that can hit for poolside power, but he went opposite field multiple times. I mean, he can use the entire field. He hit multiple opposite field home runs. He did that obviously at East Carolina, which does, the ball does carry out to right field pretty well, but he also did it on the road multiple times, in the conference tournament in Clearwater, Florida. He also did it when playing at, a minor league ballpark, the Durham Bulls ballpark, when they played Duke against a lefty who was throwing in the low 90s, took him out opposite field. So he's always been more of a, he's got that reputation as a gap-to-gap hitter, but he hits some no-doubters too. I mean, when he connects, I think he's got a chance for that power to play in pro ball. I mean, the one thing is he never got the chance to really play in the Cape with the Wood Bat League due to the COVID pandemic, so that maybe hurt. Like, hey, is this guy's power going to translate to pro ball? But I think really with his short, compact swing, he generates a lot more pop than you might think. So I could see him hitting, 15, 20 home runs at the professional level.
He's really a perfect leadoff hitter for baseball in 2021 because he steals the bags. He had 18 of them. He gets on base, a 484 on base percentage, but he also has that pop where he can start a game with a home run. And that's what teams are looking for as well. And I know ECU has had a lot of firepower offensively the last couple of years, but, especially this year, it just seems like he was the perfect table setter for this offense.
He was. And that's the thing, you look at kind of the trend in pro baseball. A lot of teams are going to their best hitter as their leadoff hitter. And he started games with home runs on a handful of occasions. I mean, that's the thing is he the coaching staff kind of admitted he wasn't very comfortable hitting leadoff in the preseason. And they just decided at one point early in the year, they're like, you know what, you're going to bat leadoff and you're going to like it. We'll see how it goes. I think he had a home run to lead off that game or early in that game. And then he stuck there the rest of the season. So that's the thing too, is when he got on base, he stole bases. I mean, he was very successful in stealing bases. So he's got speed. And, the thing was he was playing through a groin injury, I believe, at some point in the year, and he was still able to steal bases at a high rate and hit for the level that he was able to hit at. So I think speed, power, contact, doesn't strike out, walks a good amount. What more can you ask for? He's just a complete hitter, uses the entire field. You can't really shift on him. So I just think he is that prototypical top of the order guy.
And then I got to ask, he obviously was great before the shutdown in 2020. He was hitting 403. Now the power wasn't, as much there, but he was still fantastic. But, everybody has looked at his, freshman year stats and, he was not really, much of a contributor on this team, only 31 at bats. And when he did play, he hit 194. And I know this team, with the likes of Bryant Packard and Alec Burleson had, studs up and down the lineup 1 through 9. But, was it just kind of about him getting that opportunity to play, in 2020 and then 21 for him to really break out?
Yeah, that's the thing is, I heard coming out of high school, he had all the talent. I mean, there was no doubt. He wasn't a big draft guy coming out of high school, probably because of his size and maybe his profile, but he was a guy that could have started on talent alone for a top 25 team at ECU, but the maturity was not there as a freshman. And also they had a fourth-year senior, Brady Lloyd, at second base, who was kind of they had been to regionals, super regionals. They weren't going to bench him for a freshman. And so Norby ended up having to kind of learn the ropes that year. Basically admitted he had some come to Jesus meetings with head coach Cliff Godwin during the course of that year, at the end of that year, because he just had to mature. He didn't handle himself in practice as he should have. And I think things finally clicked after that year, after kind of seeing what Brady Lloyd did, some of the other older infielders did. And when things clicked, you could see the talent start to play every single day in practice rather than just flash. I mean, I remember watching him in a preseason scrimmage. He was facing Jake Agnos, who was a fourth-round pick of the Yankees a couple of years ago. Got down 0-2, fouled off 5 or 6 pitches, and then lined a double into the gap. And that was as a true freshman before the season even started. I'm like, wow, is this kid not even going to play this year? So he's always had the talent. It was just a matter of him maturing, and he's done that. And obviously the results speak for themselves.
I think the last thing I got to ask is defensively, because we know there are a lot of guys who end up playing second base, when they get to the major league level. A lot of those guys are drafted as shortstops, and maybe they get moved over to that position. Now, I know Connor was, really the second baseman for this team, and I know he could play a little bit of shortstop, but, do you feel like the defense, because sometimes for guys, the defense is just good enough at second already where it's fine that they stick there and they have the bat. Do you feel like the defense is good enough there where, it's not a worry that, he's not a typical shortstop. He's more of a second baseman coming in?
Yeah, I think he can still get better defensively. For some reason he's got this rap as like having a fringy arm, but I think it's more off accuracy than arm strength. I mean, he was a guy that touched 92 on the mound in high school, and he actually pitched in the Louisville Super Regional a couple of years ago. He wasn't a big two-way player, but they just needed a guy to throw, and he was out there throwing 93, just kind of, just on the mound, kind of throwing. So, I mean, he's got the arm strength. I think it's just more consistency. He had a couple of plays where I don't know if it was focus or whatnot, but routine plays that he would just mess up on, and then he would make a sparkling play. He turned some amazing double plays. So I think that, too, is another area of his game that he can continue to grow. I think he can be an above-average defender at second base. It's just about being more consistent. But I think he's definitely got the arm strength. I think it's just more of the consistency he needs. He could probably be a guy that if he really works at it, could move around, play some third, play some short if needed as kind of a utility guy. I do think second, though, is his primary go-to spot.
And that's the thing, if you can just play out there a little bit with the bat that he has, the Orioles are going to find somewhere to put him on the diamond, obviously as a second-round pick, to get his bat in the lineup. And, he did bring me personally a little bit of sadness this year as a Maryland baseball fan, helping to eliminate the Terps in the regional. But that was a great ECU team, and he was the table setter. And obviously the Orioles are lucky to have a bat this good. But Stephen, thank you so much for coming on and give us a little bit of insight into Connor Norby, who's going to be a big part of this Orioles rebuild as they try to get back to their winning ways. And hopefully he's a part of the major league team when they start to win baseball games again.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to come on. Connor, I got to know him well over the last 3 years. Great guy. And like I said, really matured. And the other thing I think Oriole fans will enjoy is he brings some swag to the game. Not saying that he pimps all his home runs or anything like that, but he does have a little bit of attitude. And I think he plays the game the right way. So I think you guys will really enjoy him.
Back to the Orioles talk in just a second, but first got to tell you about betonline.ag, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. And of course, we've got baseball season in full swing. And today, the second half really begins. Of course, there was Yankees-Red Sox on last night, but we've got Orioles baseball back as they take on the Royals, and you can start placing wagers on baseball once again over at betonline.ag. But it's not just baseball. How about UFC and MMA action on Saturday? How about some NBA Finals with Game 5 coming up this weekend? You can bet on it all at betonline.ag. So don't sit on the sidelines any longer. This is your chance to get into the game. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today, and you can receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use the promo code LOCKEDON. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit at betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts.
This episode is brought to you by Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing with Philips One. This one is the ideal one for those who are still using an old-school manual toothbrush. To all those people, it's time to take your brushing one level up. The solution is a simple one. It's the perfect timing one. It's the long-lasting battery-powered or USB rechargeable one. That comes in multiple colors to match you one. The one with a subscription that delivers new brush heads for just $5. Your teeth deserve this one. Philips One by Sonicare. One up your brushing. Learn more at philips.com/one. That's philips.com/ONE.
So our thanks again to Stephen Igo, who covers ECU again for their 24/7 sports site, and does a great job covering all things ECU athletics, including the Pirates baseball team, which has been just on a roll here these last few years, one of the best programs in the country. And Connor Norby, going to be one of the many great hitters that they have produced over the last few years, and I think the Orioles got a really good pick here. A lot of people not excited because he's not the biggest guy, 5'10". He plays second base. You see a lot of second basemen, like we talked about, college shortstops, they move to second. Well, he's already at second, and he's not a Gold Glove type defender there, but that bat is going to play, and the fact that the 15 homers came on this year is a huge part of this, because even if he's a guy hitting .415, but he's got 1, 2, 3 home runs, you're a little worried about that he's just a college singles hitter, but he had all the power, the 15 doubles, the 15 homers, and he hits .415 throughout the year. That is a great hitter. He was the top bat on the board, top college bat on the board when the Orioles picked at 41, and I honestly think they took the best player on the board available that was at least going to sign at pick number 41, and I'm a big fan of this Connor Norby pick. I've watched a lot of him in college baseball, especially in the NCAA Regional. Of course, my Maryland Terrapins were at the ECU Regional in the NCAA Tournament. Watched Norby get a lot of hits in that Regional, but I think he's going to be a good player, and I think this was a good second-round pick by the Orioles. But of course, this week, really for the O's has been all about, the system. They had the Futures game Sunday with Adley Rutschman and Marcos Diplan playing. They had, still a full week of minor league baseball, despite the major leagues having the All-Star break. They had the draft this week. And, really, besides Monday night, Trey Mancini, and then Tuesday night, Cedric Mullins in the Derby and the All-Star game, it's been all about the minors. But we're back to Major League Baseball tonight. Coming out of the first half and into the second half, the Orioles will take on the Kansas City Royals for the first time since 2019. The two teams will match up in KC for a 3-game series starting tonight, a Friday and Saturday, Sunday series to start the second half. Now, as of recording here on Thursday evening, the only starter who has been named for these 3 games is Keegan Aiken for the Orioles, who is going to start the Friday night opener of the series. Now, Aiken, the 26-year-old left-hander, it's been a tough year for him after a promising, shortened rookie season in 2020. He has not been great so far in 2021. He has made 12 appearances, 7 starts. He's got a 7.54 ERA in 45 1/3 innings pitched. He's allowed 59 hits, 38 earned runs, struck out 44, walked 17, given up 9 long balls on the year. And, it was interesting for Aiken because he was supposed to start last Thursday night. That game got postponed due to rain against the Blue Jays. The Orioles didn't put him back into the rotation, but he actually was able to pitch in bulk in relief in the Saturday game against the White Sox after Thomas Eshelman lasted just 2 innings in his start. Aiken went 4 1/3 in relief, allowing 4 runs on 6 hits. He did have 6 strikeouts to just 1 walk. That was the good sign. Obviously, the bad sign was the 4 runs, but he did give the Orioles length out of the pen, which they needed, and it was enough to keep him in the rotation and start him here tonight. Now, it has been bad recently for Keegan Aiken. in his last 5 appearances, he has given up at least 4 earned runs. You have 4 runs in 4 1/3, 4 runs in 3 innings, 6 runs in 4 1/3, 5 runs in 4 innings, and 8 runs in 5 2/3. That's his last 5 appearances. And he was pretty solid in May and his first start of June. And then things really started to go downhill for Aiken. So, we'll see if he can try and bounce back against this Royals team. And again, looking at the rest of the Orioles rotation, since Spencer Watkins did pitch Sunday, obviously he's not going to pitch Friday. He'd be on regular rest. I don't know if they'll start him. Again, we don't know. I'm thinking at this point that most likely Jorge Lopez is going to start one of the other games this weekend, either the Saturday or the Sunday game for the Orioles. And then, to be honest, it's pretty up in the air after that. They did talk about wanting to push Matt Harvey back a little bit, so you could maybe see potentially Eshelman Sunday after Lopez Saturday, potentially here in this weekend series. And for the Royals, we don't know who they're going to be starting yet, but did want to kind of preview what this team looks like. And you take a look at their rotation at the moment, and obviously early in the season they had Danny Duffy, who was just incredible. He's made 12 appearances, a 2.53 ERA. He got hurt and was out for a while for this Royals team, and they really missed him. These Royals were red hot to open the season. They looked like kind of the underdog team coming out of the gates this year. They had a really, really good start to the year. They got to 16-9, and then they lost 11 games in a row in May. They won on the first day of May to get to 16-9, and after that lost 11 in a row. Didn't break that streak until May 14th against Chicago. Then they kind of huddled around 500 for a while, went back over 500 for just a second, but then they really closed out the first half in an awful, awful way. They had another really long losing streak right at the end of June and into the beginning of July, where they ended up losing another 9 games in a row, and 36-53 is the record they sit with right now, and that is good for last in the AL Central. But in terms of the starting pitching, again, Duffy is back in there after the injury. He is obviously a potential for the Orioles to see, the veteran left-hander. Mike Minor has been getting a lot of starts for this team, although he hasn't been good. ERA over 5. Brad Keller, same thing. He's been really bad. ERA almost 6, but he's gotten 19 starts. And then they have a bunch of young guys who they're kind of bringing in and out of the rotation. Brady Singer has gotten 18 starts, former top prospect. Chris Bubik has gotten 8 starts, 15 appearances on the year, and they've used a couple more guys like Daniel Lynch, who has come up and made some starts for this team. Jacob Junis, who's on the injured list, has made some starts for this team. But overall, those top 5 have kind of been the guys who the Orioles will see. And besides Duffy, they have had a tough time pitching this year. And they've also had a real issue at the back end of the bullpen this season. They, at the moment, have really been splitting the save chances between a lot of guys. Greg Holland, of course, he was the lockdown closer when they won the World Series. He's back on the team. He's 35. He's not the same pitcher. He does have 5 saves, but he has a 4.89 ERA. Scott Barlow has kind of been the guy they've gone to as of late. ERA under 3. He's got 4 saves. Josh Stalmont is a righty who throws over 100, but doesn't really know where it's going sometimes. He's got 5 saves. And then Kyle Zimmer, a 29-year-old right-hander, also has a couple of saves as well. They also have Wade Davis back on this team, that old bullpen, but he is on the injured list. And the bullpen has not been good either. It's just been really a struggle for Kansas City. At the plate, though, who the Orioles will see first and foremost is Salvador Perez. Of course, we saw him in the All-Star game and in the Home Run Derby this week. The 31-year-old catcher has kind of resurrected himself a little bit this year, hitting .275 with a 300 on base. He's got 21 homers, 16 doubles on the season. One thing about Perez, though, he strikes out a crazy amount, and he does not walk. In 363 plate appearances so far this year, 89 games, 98 strikeouts to 8 walks for Salvador Perez. It's going to be hard to walk that guy. Other than that, Whit Merrifield has been good this season. He was an all-star, 270 hitter, 321 on base, 20 doubles for him, leads this team. And then, you've got Jorge Soler, who is really struggling this year. He does have 7 homers, but it has been tough. Andrew Benintendi had a really slow start. Remember, the Royals traded for him. He now has 10 home runs, which is 3rd on the team. He's starting to pick it up. And then Carlos Santana has been, you could argue, their best hitter this year. The 35-year-old first baseman came over from Cleveland this offseason. He's got 15 home runs, good for second best on the team. He's got a 368 on base, which is the best on the team. He's probably been the best hitter, either him or Salvador Perez. And then, of course, we should get to see our old friend Hanser Alberto. He's played 65 games for the Royals. Has kind of been an in and out of the lineup player. 12 doubles, 1 home run, hitting .265 with a 282 on base. Usual Hanser Alberto things, just 17 strikeouts in 158 plate appearances. He's not striking out. Only 2 walks in that time as well. So he is doing what he does best. It'll be fun to see him on the field again. But that is what the Royals look like. It'll be O's and Royals for 3 games this weekend in Kansas City. And, of course, a team that I still think Orioles fans do not enjoy playing very often, especially don't enjoy seeing Kauffman Stadium because of what happened in 2014. But the Friday night game, it'll be Keegan Aiken starting for the Orioles. We're not sure for the Royals. It's an 8:10 p.m. Eastern time start tonight. Saturday they go at 7:10 Eastern time, and Sunday is at 2:10 Eastern time for the Orioles and the Royals. And then after that series, we will be back with you here on the pod on Monday. We'll recap the weekend series between the O's and the Royals, get you the 3 big takeaways from the weekend. And then next week, we will look ahead to the series in Tampa Bay between the O's and the Rays. That is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And also, we will continue breaking down each and every one of the Orioles draft picks. Again, each of them going to get their own segment here on the pod, and we will continue that next week on Tuesday and beyond. But if you're liking what you're hearing here on the podcast, make sure to subscribe if you can on Apple Podcasts, like the pod on Spotify as well, Stitcher, wherever you're listening right now. On Apple Podcasts especially, give us a rating and a review if you can. It's okay if it's a good one. It's okay if it's a bad one. Just let us know what you think. That really, really helps out the pod with those reviews and helps us continue to give you the best content we can. Before we go, I'm going to tell you about one other pod here on the network. That is the Locked On Today podcast. And today on the Locked On Today podcast, Giannis Antetokounmpo blocks the Phoenix Suns from going up 3-1. Get more of the sports news you need in less time with the Locked On Today podcast. Follow the Locked On Today podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your pods. So again, we're back here on Monday, recapping the weekend series between the Orioles and the Royals, and then more next week looking at all the Orioles MLB draft picks. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.